The scream tore through the silence of my Brooklyn apartment like a freight train derailing in the dead of night. But it wasn't mine, it was Bruce's, raw and guttural, echoing off the brick walls as he bolted upright in the bed across from mine. I jolted awake, heart slamming against my ribs, the dim glow of streetlights filtering through the fire escape, casting jagged shadows that made his face look like a ghost's, pale, slick with sweat, eyes wild and unfocused. "Brian," he gasped, voice cracking like thin ice. I can't pretend anymore." And in that split second, before I could even process the words, his hand shot out, fingers trembling as they grazed my cheek, pulling me into a kiss that tasted like salt and secrets we'd both buried for years. I shoved him back, not hard, but enough to break the contact, my breath coming in sharp bursts as the room spun. The air was thick with the scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, the kind he'd splurged on after landing that internship at the ad agency, and the faint metallic tang of fear. Bruce collapsed against his pillows, chest heaving, his blue eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that pinned me in place. "What the fuck, man?" I finally managed, my voice a hoarse whisper, scrambling to sit up, the sheets tangling around my legs like restraints. He didn't answer, just stared, lips parted as if the words were lodged in his throat. And in that endless beat of silence, I realized the scream hadn't been from a nightmare. It was him breaking free from one we'd both been living. We'd been roommates for 2 years, ever since I transferred to NYU for my senior year, chasing some half-baked dream of becoming a screenwriter in the city that never sleeps. Bruce was the golden boy from the Midwest small-town Ohio, all farm boy charm wrapped in a 6-foot frame of lean muscle from years on the high school wrestling team. He'd shown up at the listing on Craigslist with a duffel bag and a grin that could disarm a bomb, cracking jokes about how he'd survive the urban jungle, while I hauled his boxes up the 3 flights of stairs in our walk-up in Williamsburg. "You're a lifesaver, Bri," he'd said, clapping me on the back, his touch lingering just a second too long, but I'd chalked it up to gratitude. That was us. Easy, uncomplicated, the kind of bromance that fueled late-night pizza runs and binge-watching old Tarantino flicks until the sun cracked the horizon. But New York has a way of cracking people open, exposing the fault lines you didn't know were there. I'd come out in high school back in Seattle, a messy coming out that ended with my parents' awkward hugs and a "we love you anyway" that felt more like a footnote than a headline. Bruce? He was straight as an arrow, or so he let on. Dates with baristas and gallery girls. Stories swapped over cheap beer about hookups that sounded too polished, like lines from a script. I'd nod, laugh, bury the flicker of envy that twisted in my gut whenever he'd crash on my bed after a night out, his arm slung heavy across my waist in sleep, breath warm against my neck. It was nothing, I told myself. Just roommates. Just bros. That night, though, the scream, the kiss, it shattered the glass we'd been tiptoeing around. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, tasting him still, a ghost of whiskey from whatever he'd drowned his demons in earlier. "Talk to me," I said, voice steadier now, though my pulse thrummed like a bass line in a dive bar. He ran a hand through his damp blonde hair, the strands sticking up in defiant spikes, and let out a shaky laugh that held no humor. "I dreamed about you again. The same one. You were leaving, Bri, packing your shit and walking out that door without looking back. And I couldn't let you go." His eyes dropped to the floor, tracing the scuffed hardwood where we'd spilled coffee 100 times, argued over whose turn it was to pay the Con Edison bill. I swallowed hard, The room suddenly too small, the walls closing in like the subway at rush hour. Bruce, you're drunk. Or high. Or both. This isn't. He cut me off with a shake of his head, fierce now, leaning forward until his knees bumped mine. I'm sober as a judge, man. And I've been lying to you. To myself. For months. Years. Maybe. The confession hung there, heavy as the humid summer air seeping through the cracked window, and I felt it settle in my bones. A truth I'd suspected but never dared name. We talked until the sky lightened to that bruised purple of pre-dawn, words tumbling out like debris from a wreck. He told me about the first time, freshman year at Ohio State, a fumbling hookup in a dorm bathroom with a guy from his lit class, the panic that followed like a shadow. How he'd buried it under layers of denial, football games and frat parties, until I crashed into his life with my sarcasm and my screenplays scribbled on napkins. You make me feel seen, Bri. Not like some poster boy for normal. Like I could be fucked up and you'd still stick around. I listened, heart aching, because yeah, I would. I had. Through his breakup with that model type from Chelsea, the nights he'd come home hollow-eyed and raging at the world. By the time the sun crested the East River, we were spent, slumped against the headboard with lukewarm coffee from the Keurig that tasted like regret. What now? I asked, voice raw. He shrugged, that lopsided smile flickering back like a faulty bulb. Hell if I know. But I'm done hiding. It felt like a promise, fragile and new, the kind you whisper to the stars over the Brooklyn Bridge. Little did I know, it was the calm before the storm, the kind that rips through your life like a nor'easter, leaving nothing but wreckage and wonder in its wake. As the days blurred into a tentative rhythm, that kiss lingered like a bruise, tender, insistent, coloring every glance, every accidental brush of hands in the cramped kitchen. We'd fall back into old patterns. Me pounding out dialogue on my laptop at the thrift store desk, him sketching ad concepts on the couch, the Mets game droning in the background like white noise. But now there was electricity in the air, a current humming just beneath the surface. He'd catch my eye across the room, hold it a beat too long, and I'd feel that pull, magnetic and terrifying. One evening, after a brutal critique in my screenwriting workshop, professor calling my rom-com pitch cliché drivel with heart but no guts, I came home to find Bruce in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, flour dusting his forearms like snow. Tried that bread recipe from that YouTube guy you like, he said, grinning sheepishly as he slid a lopsided loaf onto the counter. It was burnt on one edge, dense as a brick, but the gesture hit me square in the chest. We ate it anyway, slathered in butter, laughing until crumbs flew, and when our knees knocked under the tiny table, neither of us pulled away. That night, the line blurred again. We'd cracked open a bottle of red from the corner bodega, cheap Merlot that stained our lips purple, and the conversation meandered from Tarantino's dialogue tricks to the what-ifs of our lives. You ever think about leaving this shithole? He asked, swirling his glass, the city lights painting golden flecks in his eyes. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. All the time. Hollywood's calling, man. But then, who'd keep you from burning the place down? He chuckled, low and warm, but his gaze sharpened. I'd miss you, Bri. More than I should. The words hung, and before I could deflect, he was there, leaning across the table, hand cupping the back of my neck, pulling me into a kiss that was slow, deliberate, Nothing like the frantic desperation of that first night. I melted into it, fingers threading through his hair, tasting wine and want. When we broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "Is this okay?" he whispered, vulnerability cracking his voice. "More than okay," I murmured back, and for the first time, felt real. Possible. But New York doesn't let you have nice things without a catch. The next week, Bruce's internship ramped up, late nights at the agency, schmoozing clients over steak at Peter Luger. I'd wait up, scrolling scripts on my phone, the apartment echoing with absence. Then came the texts, vague apologies, stuck at work, followed by a photo of him with the team, arms slung around a guy named Tyler, tall, dark-haired, the kind of effortlessly cool that screams trust fund. "New creative director," the caption read. Killing it. Jealousy coiled in my gut like smoke, but I shoved it down. We weren't exclusive. Not yet. Still, when he stumbled in at 2 a.m., reeking of bourbon and cologne that wasn't his, couldn't hold back. "Rough night?" I asked, feigning casual from the couch. He paused in the doorway, tie loosened, eyes glassy. "Yeah." Tyler's intense. Pushes boundaries. You know, the way he said it, lingering on the name, twisted the knife. I nodded, throat tight. Sounds fun. He crashed without another word, but sleep evaded me. By morning, the seed of doubt had taken root, whispers of what if this was just a phase for him, a rebellion against the straight-laced life he'd been groomed for. I buried myself in revisions, the click of keys a metronome to my unease, while across town, Bruce was building something I couldn't touch. The doubt festered like an untreated wound, seeping into every interaction, turning our fragile new normal into a minefield. We'd steal moments, a quick make-out against the fridge before he dashed for the subway, his hands mapping my hips like uncharted territory. Lazy Sundays tangled in sheets, trading stories of childhood's worlds apart. His tales of cornfields and county fairs clashing with my rainy Pacific Northwest hikes. But the late nights piled up, Tyler's name slipping into conversation like an uninvited guest. "Tyler's got this killer pitch for a campaign." Or, "Grab drinks with the team. Tyler's buying next time." I tried to play it cool, cracking jokes about his work husband. But inside, it gnawed. One night, after he'd bailed on our planned dive to that speakeasy in the village, client dinner, rain check, I found myself at a queer open mic in Bushwick, nursing a gin and tonic amid a crowd of drag queens and poets spilling their guts. A guy with sleeve tattoos and a lip ring bought me around, his laugh easy, flirtation light as air. "You look like you could use a distraction," he said, leaning in close enough that I caught the scent of patchouli and possibility. We ended up back at his place, a loft in Bed-Stuy with exposed beams and fairy lights strung like stars. It was uncomplicated. Clothes shed in a frenzy, bodies colliding without the weight of history. His name was Jordan, a graphic designer with a laugh that rumbled like thunder, and for those stolen hours, I forgot the ache. But guilt crashed in with the dawn, sharp as shattered glass, as I slipped out before he woke, hailing a cab back to Brooklyn with the city awakening around me in a haze of exhaust and ambition. Bruce was already up when I got home, perched on the fire escape with coffee, the morning sun gilding his profile like a halo. "Where were you?" he asked, voice casual but eyes sharp, scanning me for tells, the rumpled shirt, the faint stubble burn on my neck. I shrugged, kicking off my shoes. Crashed at a friend's after the mic. Late night. He nodded, slow, but the air thickened, charged with unspoken accusations. Cool. Just missed you. The words landed soft, but they stung. A reminder of the tether we'd forged, now fraying at the edges. That afternoon, we confronted it head-on, words flying like shrapnel in the living room that doubled as my office. Tyler's just a colleague. Bry, he insisted, pacing the worn rug, hands gesturing wildly. But you, sneaking out, coming home smelling like someone else's smoke? What the hell? I fired back, heat rising in my chest. Pot, kettle, asshole. You're the one building a bromance with your boss while I'm here waiting like some side piece. He stopped, face crumpling, and for a moment, I saw the boy from Ohio, the one who'd confessed his fears over cheap beer, raw and real. I'm scared. Okay. He admitted, sinking onto the couch, elbows on knees. Us. It's everything I want. But what if I fuck it up? What if I'm not? Enough. His voice broke on the last word, and I crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling him into my arms. He clung like a lifeline, face buried in my shoulder, and I whispered assurances I half believed. You're enough. We're enough. We made love then, slow and urgent, reclaiming each other on the couch amid scattered script pages, the world outside fading to irrelevance. But peace is fleeting in the city, and betrayal wears many masks. 2 weeks later, my script mentor hooked me up with a table read at an indie production house in Tribeca, low stakes, but a foot in the door. I invited Bruce, hyped it as our big night out, but he texted last minute, stuck at the agency. Kill it for us. Deflated but determined, I went alone, schmoozing with actors and producers over craft cocktails, the buzz of validation drowning my disappointment. That's when I saw them, Bruce and Tyler, slipping into a dimly lit booth at the back. Heads bent close, Tyler's hand lingering on Bruce's arm a fraction too long. My stomach dropped, the room tilting as I watched Tyler lean in, lips brushing Bruce's ear in what could only be a whisper, but looked like a promise. Rage boiled up, hot and irrational, and before I could think, I was across the bar, slamming my glass down hard enough to slosh bourbon over the rim. Brian, Bruce started, face draining of color, but Tyler just smirked, all polished teeth and entitlement. Hey, man. Bruce was just telling me about your script. Sounds dope. The lie hung thin, and I laughed, bitter and sharp. Save it. Both of you. I stormed out into the night, the autumn chill biting through my jacket, tears blurring the neon signs as I wandered aimlessly toward the river. He found me hours later, on a bench by the East River, the water black and restless under the bridge lights. It wasn't what it looked like, he pleaded, dropping to his knees in the gravel, voice hoarse from shouting my name into the wind. Tyler's pushing for a promotion, wants me on his team. He made a move. Yeah. But I shut it down. Told him about us. I searched his face, the raw plea in his eyes, and wanted to believe him. God, I did. But trust, once cracked, leaks doubt like poison. We went home in silence, the cab ride a chasm of unspoken fears. That night, he reached for me in the dark, but I turned away, the space between us vast as the Hudson. Sleep came fitful, haunted by what-ifs, and in the morning, the apartment felt like a crime scene, evidence of our unraveling everywhere. His forgotten tie on the chair, my script notes crumpled on the floor. Desperation drove me to Jordan's loft the next evening, a reckless bid for numbness. But as we tumbled into bed, his touches felt wrong, too practiced, lacking the poetry of Bruce's hesitance. I left before midnight, guilt a lead weight, vowing to end it clean. Back home, the lights were on, Bruce waiting with takeout from our favorite Thai spot, eyes red-rimmed. "We need to talk," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. What followed was a purge, confession spilling like rain down a gutter. My night with Jordan, his brush-off of Tyler, the terror of losing each other to the city's endless temptations. "I love you," he said at last, the words a thunderclap in the quiet kitchen. "Not as a roommate, or a bro. Everything." Tears tracked down his cheeks, and I pulled him close, the dam breaking for us both. "I love you too," I whispered, and in that admission, we began to rebuild, brick by fragile brick. Yet shadows lingered. Tyler didn't take rejection well. Subtle digs at the agency, whispers that poisoned Bruce's shot at the promotion. And my script? It bombed at the read, feedback stinging like salt in a cut. Too sentimental. Ground it in reality. We leaned on each other, nights spent plotting escapes, maybe a road trip to the Finger Lakes, or me finally pitching that queer rom drama I'd shelved out of fear. One crisp November evening, as snow flurried like confetti over Prospect Park, we walked hand in hand, breaths fogging the air. "Remember that first night?" he asked, squeezing my fingers. "The scream, the kiss," I nodded, smiling despite the chill. "How could I forget? You left me speechless." He stopped, turning to face me, the city lights haloing his silhouette. "Good. Because I've got more where that came from." In that moment, with the world spinning mad around us, I believed we could weather it, the betrayals, the doubts. Love in New York was a gamble, high stakes and heartbreaking, but ours felt worth the bet. Winter clamped down on the city like a vice, turning our walks into slogs through slush and our breaths into visible prayers for endurance. Bruce's promotion fell through, Tyler's sabotage slithering through the ranks like a bad memo, leaving him demoted to grunt work, endless revisions on campaigns that went nowhere. He'd come home defeated, shoulders slumped under the weight of his wool coat, but I'd be there with hot toddies and bad puns, coaxing that grin back like coaxing fire from embers. "You're too good for that place," I'd say, massaging the knots from his neck as we curled on the couch, the radiator hissing like an old friend. My own battles raged on the page. The bombed script haunted me, a ghost in my inbox, until a chance email from a producer friend. "Heard your read tanked. Send me something raw." Lit a spark. I dove in, pouring us into the words. Two guys navigating the minefield of love in a city that chews up dreams. Brian and Alex, roommates turned lovers. Their hook a midnight confession that echoes through betrayal and redemption. Bruce read drafts over my shoulder. His input sharp, "Make the fight messier. Real fights are ugly." And in those collaborative nights, fueled by ramen and Red Bull, we found our footing. But Tyler wasn't done. He cornered Bruce at the office holiday party, a glitzy affair at some rooftop lounge in Midtown, all twinkling lights and forced cheer. Bruce came home early, face ashen, tie yanked loose like a noose. "He outed me," he said, voice flat, collapsing into a chair. "Told the team about us." said it was team building or some bullshit. Now everyone's staring, whispering. The words landed like punches, and I knelt before him, hands on his knees. Fuck them. You're brilliant. They'll see it. But inside, fury simmered, for Tyler's cruelty, for the world that made coming out a weapon. The backlash hit like a wave. Bruce's emails dried up. Clients pulled back, citing fit issues. He spiraled, hitting the gym until his knuckles bled on the bag. Nights spent staring at the ceiling while I traced patterns on his chest, whispering, "We're in this." One blizzard night, as winds howled off the harbor, he broke. "What if I drag you down, Bry? You deserve better than this mess." Tears soaked the pillow, his body shaking under mine. I held him tighter, voice fierce. "You're my mess. And I'd choose it every time." Spring thawed the ice, but not the chill between us. I landed a fellowship 6 months in LA, polishing the script with a studio mentor. It was the break I'd clawed for, but the timing gutted me. "Go," Bruce urged, forcing a smile over pancakes at our greasy spoon. "This is your shot. I'll hold down the fort." We promised calls every night, visits on weekends, but distance is a thief, stealing inches until miles yawn wide. LA was a siren. Palm trees swaying like promises, pool parties where agents swam in egos bigger than the Hollywood sign. The script evolved, infused with our story, and readings buzzed with potential. But loneliness crept in. Texts from Bruce growing sparse. Agency drama. "Miss you." Then, a photo him at a bar with old college buddies. Arm around a girl named Sarah. Her laugh captured mid-bloom. "Just friends," the caption read, but doubt whispered otherwise. I flew back for a weekend. The reunion electric, him waiting at JFK. Bouquet of daisies wilting in his fist. Our kiss devouring the terminal's bustle. We fucked like we were starving, rediscovering each other in the sheets. But cracks showed, his evasions about work. My stories of LA nights glossed over. "Tyler's gone," he mentioned offhand, stirring coffee. "Quit after HR got wind." Clean slate. Relief flooded me, but so did suspicion. A shadow I couldn't shake. Back in California, the messages escalated. Sarah's name popped up more. Group hang? She's cool. Until a late-night call shattered it. Bruce's voice, slurred and shattered. "I fucked up, Bry. I slept with her. Thought it would fix me, make me normal again." The line went dead, my world fracturing into static. I screamed into the pillow, betrayal a blade twisting deep. Not just the act, but the lie it confirmed, that I was the experiment, the detour on his road to straight. I didn't call back. Days blurred into a haze of revisions and rage. The script's lovers now warring on the page, their happily ever after rewritten in blood. When I finally returned to New York, unannounced, the apartment was a tomb, boxes half-packed, his scent fading like smoke. He was there, on the fire escape, cigarette burning low. "You came back," he breathed, eyes hollow. I dropped my bag, words venomous. "To end this, you chose her." "Chose easy." He recoiled as if slapped, then surged forward, gripping my arms. "It was one night. A panic attack after a bad day. But you're home, Bry. The only one that fits." "Lies," I thought, but his desperation cracked me. We argued for hours, voices rising until neighbors banged on the walls, accusations flying, my distance in LA, his clinging to ghosts of normalcy. I betrayed you, he admitted at last, sinking to his knees. But I love you more than fear. More than anything, I wanted to walk, to let the door slam on our wreckage. Instead, I pulled him up, our foreheads touching, tears mingling. Prove it, I whispered. No more hiding. No more halfway. He nodded, vow solemn as a oath. And in the ruins, we began again therapy sessions in Chelsea, couples counseling where we unpacked the baggage like archaeologists at a dig. Summer scorched the city, turning our block into a furnace, but we thrived in the heat. Bruce quit the agency, pivoting to freelance design, his portfolio blooming with bold, unapologetic work. I sold the script, optioned by a queer indie outfit, greenlit for a short film festival. The premiere was magic. Us in ill-fitting suits at a theater in the East Village, hands clasped as the credits rolled, applause thundering like approval from the gods. After, on that rooftop where it all might have ended, rain pattering soft as we danced to phantom music, he pulled a ring from his pocket. Not diamond, but a simple band etched with always. Not marriage, he said, voice thick. Not yet. But a promise. To fight for this. I slipped it on, heart full, the city sprawling below like a canvas we'd yet to paint. We weren't fixed scars like tattoos, reminders of the battles won. But in the quiet moments, his head on my chest, the world felt human again. Flawed, fierce, worth every breathless word. Autumn leaves carpeted the parks in fiery protest against the dying light, mirroring the blaze we'd reignited. Life settled into a rhythm that felt dangerously close to domestic bliss. Mornings tangled in sunlight. Bruce sketching at the kitchen table while I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Evenings at indie flicks in the Angelica, his hand warm in mine. Popcorn battles escalating into stolen kisses in the dark. The ring on my finger caught the light like a secret shared, a talisman against the doubts that still whispered in quiet hours. But New York, that relentless bitch, had one more curveball. Bruce's freelance gigs exploded, a viral campaign for a queer-owned apparel line, billboards popping up in Times Square with his name in bold. Success suited him, filling out the hollows fear had carved. But it drew eyes, invitations to panels, mixers where admirers orbited like moths. Just networking, he'd say, returning with business cards and a flush that wasn't all from wine. I trusted mostly, but jealousy is a sly fox, nipping at heels when least expected. My film premiered at Tribeca, a sold-out house buzzing with energy that crackled like live wire. The story, our story, thinly veiled, unfolded on screen. The scream in the night, the kiss that bridged chasms, the betrayals that tested like fire. Laughter rippled through the intimate betrayals, gasps at the raw confessions, and when the lovers reconciled under a rain-lashed skyline, applause erupted, sustained and soul-deep. Bruce sat beside me, grip bruising, whispering, "You captured us." Perfectly. The after-party was a whirlwind. Producers slapping backs, journalists thrusting mics, a cute cinematographer from Sundance lingering too long with compliments on my visceral dialogue. Bruce watched from across the room, smile tight, and later, in the cab home, he unloaded. "That guy was all over you. What's his deal?" I laughed, incredulous. Jealous? After everything, his face darkened, the old wounds reopening. Maybe. Or maybe I'm tired of sharing the spotlight, even if it's just for a night. The fight simmered into the next day. Words escalating over brunch at a spot in Soho. Accusations of hypocrisy. My LA glow-up, making me distant. His newfound fame inflating his ego. You're acting like I cheated again, he snapped, fork clattering against porcelain. And you're acting like trust is a one-way street. I shot back, storming out into the crisp air, leaves crunching underfoot like brittle bones. I crashed at a friend's in the Lower East Side, the night a blur of bars and bad decisions, shots with strangers, a grind on the dance floor that tasted like ash. Dawn found me on a stoop, phone buzzing with missed calls, a voicemail from Bruce cracking my resolve. I hate this. Hate fighting you. Come home, Bri. Please. Surrender washed over me, and I hailed a car, the city blurring past in streaks of gold and gray. He was waiting in the doorway, disheveled and devastated, pulling me into an embrace that mended fractures. I'm sorry, we chorused, collapsing onto the bed in a heap of apologies and affirmations. Lovemaking followed, tender and reclaiming, bodies speaking what words fumbled. We're stronger than this, he murmured against my skin, and I believed him, tracing the freckles across his shoulders like constellations guiding us true. Winter's grip loosened into a tentative spring, but shadows lengthened elsewhere. Bruce's mom called from Ohio, first time in months, her voice tinny over the line, laced with that Midwestern politeness masking judgment. Heard about the billboards, honey. And the other stuff. Your father and I, we pray for you. The other stuff. Us, hung unspoken, a grenade with the pin half pulled. Bruce hung up mid-sentence, face ashen, and for days, he withdrew, sketching furiously but saying little. I pushed gently, over walks in Central Park where dog walkers and joggers formed a oblivious parade. Talk to me, I urged, linking our fingers under the budding cherry blossoms. He stopped by the Bethesda fountain, water tinkling like chimes. They're coming to visit. In 2 weeks. Want to meet the roommate who's got me smiling again. Sarcasm dripped, but so did fear, visceral, bone deep. What if they hate me? Hate us? We prepped like soldiers. The apartment scoured to sterile shine. A roast in the oven that didn't char. Stories rehearsed to skirt the edges of truth. The day arrived with Midwest punctuality. His parents rolling up in a rental sedan. Salt of the earth smiles masking the scrutiny. Ellen, Bruce's mom, was all cardigans and casseroles. Hugs warm but eyes appraising. Tom, his dad, broad-shouldered and taciturn, gripping my hand with a firmness that spoke volumes. Dinner was a tightrope. Laughs over Bruce's childhood antics. My screenwriting sidestepped into creative consulting, but tension simmered, bubbling over when Ellen cornered me in the kitchen, dish towel twisted in her hands. We love our boy, Brian. But this city is changing him. You changing him. Her words landed soft, but they cut, implying I was the corruption, the phase to outgrow. I held steady, voice even. He's happier than I've ever seen. That's the change. The visit ended in strained hugs and promises of next time. But Bruce unraveled after, pacing like a caged wolf, whiskey burning his throat. They see me as broken, he raged, glass shattering against the wall in a spray of amber shards. I cleaned the mess, heart aching, pulling him down to the floor where we sat amid the wreckage. They see what they want. But I see you, all of you. And I love it. Healing came slow. In letters he wrote but never sent. Pages of pleas for acceptance. Tucked in a drawer like talismans. His parents' silence stretched. Then broke with a card. Proud of you, son. Love, Mom and Dad. No mention of me. But it was a crack in the wall. Sunlight piercing through. Summer hummed with heat waves and hope. Our 1-year mark marked with a weekend in the Hamptons, borrowed beach house. Waves crashing like applause. We swam naked at midnight. Salt skin sliding. Laughter echoing over the dunes. Here's to us, he toasted with cheap champagne. Foam bubbling over the rim like overflow joy. But even in paradise, undercurrents pulled. A call from L.A. Sequel talks for the short. An offer for Bruce to consult in Chicago. Just 3 months. We tabled decisions. Savoring the now, picnics in McCarran Park. His head in my lap as I read aloud from dog-eared Kerouac. Yet fate, that capricious director, scripted a twist. One muggy August night, storm clouds gathering like omens, Bruce collapsed in the shower, seizing, body convulsing under the spray. I burst in, heart seizing, dragging him out, dialing 911 with hands slick with fear. Stay with me, I begged, cradling his head as sirens wailed closer. The R was a blur. Fluorescent hell, doctors murmuring epilepsy, likely stress-induced, IVs dripping calm into his veins. He woke groggy, squeezing my hand. Scared you? Ha! Weak grin. But his eyes held terror, the fragility of our stolen time laid bare. Discharge papers in hand. We cabbed home, the city indifferent as ever. Recovery was a dance. Meds that fogged his edges. Appointments crammed into schedules. My script deadlines looming like guillotines. But crisis forged intimacy. Nights spent mapping his triggers, work stress, family ghosts, our bond a lifeline woven tighter. You're my anchor, he said one dawn. Sunlight slanting through blinds, his fingers tracing my jaw. As leaves turned again, so did our paths. I deferred LA for a semester, committing to the city that birthed us. Bruce turned down Chicago, eyes on a startup in Brooklyn, queer-focused branding, a mission that lit him from within. Betrayals faded to footnotes, replaced by blueprints. A lease renewal, talks of rings exchanged in vows, not just promises. In the end, it wasn't perfection we chased, but persistence, the quiet heroism of choosing each other, day after flawed day, in a world that rarely chooses back. The following spring brought a bloom of possibility, the kind that unfurls tentative petals after a brutal frost. Bruce's startup took root in a co-working space in Dumbo, warehouses reborn as hives of creativity, where he thrived, leading brainstorms with that infectious energy. His designs splashed across apps and ads that screamed authenticity. This is it, Bri, he'd say, home late but alight, sketches unfurled on the table like battle plans. Building something real. For us, for people like us. My sequel script sold outright. A limited series greenlit by a streaming giant hungry for diverse voices. Revisions meant long hours at coffee shops in NoHo. But callbacks with Bruce grounded me. His voice over the line. Nail that scene. Make him feel the gut punch. We celebrated with rooftop reservations at some overpriced spot in the Flatiron. Toasting with Manhattans as the skyline twinkled like a co-conspirator. To empires, he clinked, ice sparkling, and I wondered if this was what stability felt like. Not stasis, but momentum shared. Yet even in ascent, old ghosts stirred. Tyler resurfaced, a LinkedIn connection request, innocuous but insidious, followed by an email, "Congrats on the series." Drinks? Old times. Bruce deleted it unread. But the ripple lingered, a reminder of how thin the ice beneath us could feel. "Water under the bridge," he insisted. But I saw the flinch, the way his jaw tightened like a trap. Family dynamics shifted too. His parents' visits evolved from interrogations to awkward overtures. Ellen baking pies that didn't quite hide her questions. Tom gruffly asking about the writing gig. One Easter, over ham and hollow eggs, he came out fully, not with fanfare, but a quiet, "Brian and I, we're partners." For keeps. Silence stretched. Then Ellen's hand covered his, tears glistening. "We see that now. We're learning." It wasn't absolution, but it was grace, hard-won and human. My own folks flew in from Seattle, a whirlwind of Pike Place seafood and Broadway shows, their pride unfiltered, our boys making waves, dinners bridged coasts, stories swapped like currency, and in their easy acceptance, I glimpsed the future, holidays blended, lives intertwined. But climax brewed in the mundane. A weekend getaway to the Catskills, cabin rented on a whim, woods whispering secrets. We hiked trails slick with May rain, laughing as mud caked our boots. But the summit brought storm, literal and figurative. Thunder cracked overhead, sheets of water unleashing, forcing us to shelter under a rocky overhang. Soaked to the bone, shivering in each other's arms, the dam broke. "I almost lost you once," Bruce confessed, rain drumming like a heartbeat. "That seizure, doctors said stress, but I know it's fear. Of not being enough. Of this city eating us alive." His voice cracked, body trembling not just from cold. I cupped his face, thumbs brushing rivulets from his cheeks. "You've never been less than everything. But yeah, the scary. Loving you means risking it all." Lightning forked the sky, illuminating his resolve. "Then let's stop risking alone. Marry me, Bri. Not tomorrow, not for show for us. Vows in the chaos." The ring he'd carried upgraded, silver with etched waves, slipped onto my finger, simple as breath. I kissed him fierce, rain mingling with tears, the world narrowing to this precipice. Back in the city, planning unfolded like a script. Small ceremony in Prospect Park. Witnesses our chosen family. Jordan from that ill-fated night, now a buddy with zero drama. My mentor, toasting with wry wisdom. Invites went out, RSVPs trickling in. But doubt nipped, Bruce's mom hesitating. "It's so fast," and a producer's note on the series. Tone down the queer angst, broader appeal. The night before the wedding, insomnia gripped me, pacing the apartment as Bruce slept, the ring heavy on my hand. What if it was a phase? What if the city won, grinding our edges until we fit nowhere? Dawn crept in, and he stirred, pulling me down. "Second thoughts?" he murmured. I soughed. "Every day," I admitted. "But first thoughts win. Always you." The ceremony was poetry in motion. Under a canopy of dogwoods, sun dappling like blessings, vows exchanged raw and ragged. "I promise to scream in the night if it means waking to you," Bruce said, voice steady, drawing laughs and sniffles. "And I'll kiss you speechless every morning," I replied, sealing it with lips that knew the map of his soul. Rings exchanged. Cheers erupted. And as we danced barefoot on the grass, the skyline a distant guardian, I felt it, completion, not endpoint, but launch. Months later, the series dropped, trending, praised for its unflinching heart. Reviews lauded the electric chemistry, blind to the truth woven in. Bruce's startup secured funding, billboards evolving to murals celebrating love in all shades. We moved, upstate loft with a view of the Hudson, weekends in the city like jaunts to another life. Betrayals, faded scars, stories for toasts at parties. Conflicts, the spice that kept us sharp, arguments ending in makeups fiercer than before. And the hook, that scream, that kiss, it birthed a legacy, a reminder that love isn't found in silence, but in the shattering of it. Years on, with lines etching our faces like laugh tracks, we'd retell it to wide-eyed kids, ours or not, over campfires. Your dad started with a nightmare and woke to a dream, human, messy, profoundly ours. In America, the land of reinvention, we'd scripted our own ending. Not tragic, not flawless, but enduring. A romance for the ages, speechless in its depth.